And welcome everyone. I'm very glad to meet with you today with After the Fires Community to Community monthly meeting program. And today we have invited one of our neighbors in Northern Sonoma County, Priscilla Abercrombie, who is working with her neighbors across the northern part of Sonoma County to be ready for wildfire at the community level. She lives in the WUI. We all know that acronym now, WUI, Wildland Urban Interface. And we know that presents its own risks. So she's one of the founders and the board chair of COPE, Citizens Organized to Prepare, or I should say it's communities. It used to be called Citizens. It's now Communities Organized to Prepare for Emergencies in Northern Sonoma County. And just like me, you know, until we had these fires, we weren't all professionals in this area. I used to be, I still work with libraries a bit, but I'm a librarian, but now I work in wildfire because my house burned down a few years ago, and you learn a lot through that. Her professional background is in healthcare. She has a master's degree and doctorate in nursing from UCSF. She completed a 2-year fellowship in integrative medicine at the University of Arizona, Tucson, has certifications in integrative health coaching and integrative imagery, and she's a nationally board certified health and wellness coach. And she provided gynecological care for over 30 years, conducted research, published articles, and lectured nationally on women's health. And she has a private coaching practice called Women's Health and Healing. And she is a leader there in healthcare, but she also is a leader in her neighborhood and in the area because this keeps us healthy too. I think she'll agree. So welcome, Priscilla. Thank you so much for being here. We hold these meetings once a month or so we can get those bright ideas coming from local communities, whether it's in Oregon or Colorado or here in California. And we just want to share those good ideas and bring in questions from other places. How can we live in this era of wildfire better? And I just love this model of COPE that really was born here, but I learned about it first with earthquake. It was designed for earthquake, right? But now we adapt it to any emergency. So first of all, Priscilla, I wanted to welcome you and invite you to share how you even get started with this.
Yeah. So I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that brings us through how to get a COPE program going. And I'll weave in my story as I do that. How's Perfect. That sound?
Okay. That sounds great. Just go for it. We'd love to.
Okay.
Yeah. Because even though this is a locally based thing, I feel like people could do this anywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The framework is very adaptable. So that's what happened with us was there were some pretty big fires that happened in Lake County right next to Sonoma County. Lots of scary stuff was happening over there. Lives were lost and a lot of property was lost. And it was a real wake-up call for us that living again in the WUI and realizing, hey, we need to be better prepared. We also live on the Russian River, so we have flooding and other issues that we need to address. So we went on the search for a preparedness program. At first we were like, okay, so we need to develop a preparedness program. And then we thought, wait a minute, maybe there's something out there already and we don't need to recreate something. So we found Citizens Organized to Prepare for Emergencies, which had been developed in Santa Rosa with the Santa Rosa Fire Department and Red Cross and a community called Oakmont, which is an over 50s community suburb of Santa Rosa. And they had this framework in place and was quite popular in that area of, I don't know how many homes are in that area, but a lot. I want to say a few hundred at least that are in Oakmont. So we took that program and brought it to Fitch Mountain here which is right outside of Healdsburg. It's part of Healdsburg, but outside of the city of Healdsburg, and really developed it, adapted it to the unique circumstances in which we live here in Fitch Mountain. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in just a minute.
Yeah, if you can describe Fitch Mountain for people who don't live near here, that would be great.
Yeah. So Fitch Mountain is a community of about 340 homes. That are, again, on the Russian River on one side and a mountain on the other. So we have one ingress and egress on each end of that of our community here. Winding road, lots of undeveloped property that isn't well managed, and a large preserve on the mountain. So we have a lot of different risk living here. So let me go on here and show you a little bit more about COPE Northern Sonoma County, which is an umbrella organization, nonprofit fire safe council that represents the 4th district, which is one of the supervisorial districts in Sonoma County. So we had to come up with some kind of boundaries to have a geographic area in which we wanted to define ourselves, and that's just the way we did it. So we grew from 3 communities, Fitch Mountain, Mill Creek, and Northeast Geyserville, to 40 different communities now in this area. We've grown quite a bit over the last 5 years or so. So our mission really is to, support people in being better prepared and able to respond to emergencies. And we are an area where there are a lot of visitors and people coming to the area. So we need to include those folks as well.
And just to clarify, you're a volunteer.
Yeah, we're an all volunteer organization.
All volunteers, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, we're just getting ready to hire an executive director. So, we, I was going to say about Fitch Mountain, one of the issues in dealing with visitors, et cetera, is that where we live, this is why this was different than Oakmont. We have a lot of people that have summer cabins here on the mountain. So they aren't here except for a few months out of the year. And it may be actually many different families that are coming for weekends. So, and there are a number of vacation rentals, there are a number of full-time rentals, and then there are some of us that live here full-time. So that's really confusing, right? When you think about emergency preparedness, how to get people engaged who may be part-timers or have second homes and see their homes differently than someone who lives there full-time and that's their primary residence. So we have a board of directors, and we are so blessed to have an incredible board. We try to have 50% of our board be COPE leaders, and then we're blessed with Chief Turbovel, who's CAL FIRE and Chief of Northern Sonoma County Fire Protection District. He and I have really spearheaded a lot of this work, along with a couple of other board COPE leaders as well. Nancy Brown is the preparedness coordinator for the County of Sonoma, so has an incredible breadth of background in emergency preparedness. So these are the steps to developing a COPE program, and I really don't want to bore you by going through all 7 steps, but just want to whet your appetite by talking about the first 3 steps and kind of what the flavor of the program is. So, it's all about neighbor helping neighbor. It's a very grassroots idea. This is not the fire department coming in and saying you should, or anybody else. This is, or a government agency of any kind. It really comes from what I described for Fitch Mountain, of residents getting together and saying, hey, we need to support each other. We may not get a first responder out here if there's something bad that happens, whether it's a fire or an earthquake or whatever it might be. So we really need to be better prepared. We need to think about what the risks are in our community and mitigate those as best we can and support each other. So we sat down with a map of the area and delineated what is Fitch Mountain, what is our community. And again, there's 40 different communities in Northern Sonoma County. Fitch Mountain is one of those communities. So we sat down with a map and delineated Fitch Mountain. And we decided that we would include only the unincorporated part of Fitch Mountain, because there are parts of Fitch Mountain that are in the city of Healdsburg, and their issues are different than ours. They get their power from someplace different. They get their water from someplace different. They're on sewer, we're on septic. There are many different issues. So that's why we delineated our area. And then we took our area of our community and broke it down into neighborhoods. And that's the way people start thinking about how this might make sense to break a community down into smaller pieces. Who might be willing to get on board quickly? Those would be great neighborhoods to start with. You start to build your community and your leadership team. So you have usually 2 people as community leaders. So Fitch Mountain has 2 co-leaders that represent the community. And then under that, we have 18 different neighborhood leaders, again, with as much duplication as possible in various areas. So nobody gets burned out. Nobody feels like they're holding a lot of responsibility, but they're sharing that responsibility and can cover for each other. Someone's on vacation, whatever, we're helping back each other up. So that's the second step. And then the third step is to gather information about your neighbors and understand better how to communicate with them. You know, do they have a cell phone? Do they text? What's the best way to get a hold of them? Or in the complicated place like Fitch Mountain, who manages the property? Or who's the owner? Or who's the person who coordinates for these large families, and try to get them in the loop and involved in the work that we're doing. So, and I'll show you an example of that. All of what we do is on our website. We try to, again, start from that model of, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's share whatever we have, and people can adapt it to where they live. They don't need to start from scratch. And then you really want to meet with people, start conducting meetings, start having community meetings, getting people together. This is what COPE is. This is, these are your first responders in the area. We usually have someone from the local fire department or responding agency come. So for Fitch Mountain, we would have Healdsburg Fire is our closest fire agency that responds, and CAL FIRE. And then, of course, you can invite the sheriff or police department of the area. They're usually the ones who evacuate the area. So that would be a good, another group to come into a meeting, present some kind of education, and then gather that information about people. Oh, you know how to use a chainsaw. Oh, you're a healthcare provider. All of those things are assets, right? There may be things that you should know, like, oh, you have horses on your property. You're going to need to figure out how to get those horses off your property.
Are there best practices for how you keep track of that data?
An Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
I mean,
all right.
You know, that's all we're using right now. People have wanted to use databases, but that's all we use right now. Yeah. And then, you know, you certainly want to know about vulnerable people in your area, right? People who speak Spanish, people who have a disability, an older person who has mobility issues, those kinds of things you're going to want to know and record and make sure that they have somebody that's connected with them. And then you assess your community risks. And this you do in partnership with your first responders. You know, are they worried about ingress and egress in your area? Is it a one-lane road that's got a lot of vegetation? Is it communication? So for Fitch Mountain, when we first started this work, we had no cell signal. We don't get the NOAA radio signal here. And And then when Comcast went out, we were completely without anything. So we've had to build redundant systems. Fortunately, Verizon put in a tower close to us recently. That has been a game changer for us. But we're also doing radios. My husband became a ham operator. You know, we have chosen ways to become redundant, and a lot of communities will choose different ways to do that. Air horns, sirens, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And I see something is in the chat, and I'm not looking at the chat. So Pamela, if there's something there that I should see, be sure and let me know.
Well, we have Patty Stoller here, and she's from a Marin group that has developed a similar program. And Patty, we will save time because I do want to hear about parallel projects and other great models for this. Yeah. So excellent. You're reading my mind, and we want to share those too.
Yeah.
So
my guess would be it's probably Firewise.
And unfortunately, she said that she sent me a chat that some people were trying to get in. We're having some connectivity issues to this meeting, but we are recording the meeting. We are going to share it. And so I apologize that a couple of people were having trouble getting in, but we are sharing it as soon as it's over. So yeah.
Okay, great. And some people do choose to use Firewise as a way to look at the risk in their community, or what's called a Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP. And we have a CWPP for Fitch Mountain. We're very high risk area. And I'll just say it probably was a year-long process, and it involved a lot of different players, which made it very complicated. And I think that going with Firewise and other ways of assessing risk, there's a lot of new programs that are being developed right now. Those are also other ways to go. And then, of course, you're always wanting to educate. What's a go bag? What's defensible space? The 0 to 5 is a big issue right now, right? Because of the new law that's going to be taking effect, that will be required defensible space, and lots of other pieces to that. We've done education about taking refuge in the river. So we did this because what we found in Fitch Mountain was when we talked to our elders who had been here for 30, 40 years, still living on the mountain, so they're quite elderly, some of them, I'm going to go to the river. If there's a fire, I'm going to the river. And so when we talked to our fire agencies about that, they were like, ooh, we need to talk about this because people need to understand what it means to go to the river and the safety issues around that, et cetera. So we had a very vibrant discussion with the Russian River Keeper, our CAL FIRE chief, and our elders in a great lively meeting about what that would mean to go to the river and whether you could really even get to the river in some areas on the mountain if you're, have some mobility issues. So it was great. But that's just my way of saying everybody has unique issues where they live. And getting to know your community and your neighbors will give you insight into what's going to be important for you to talk about, plan for, and maybe educate as well. And then, of course, once you do all that work, you need to maintain those relationships and always update. Things are changing all the time, as you know. People lose their cell phone. That's not going to be a great way to communicate if they had to change their number. Or family members are now involved in taking care of that person because of their mobility issues. You want to know those kinds of things. And our kits need to be updated every year. I mean, how many people here have changed their go bags to make sure that their medicines are up to date and their water is still not expired and all of that? So just something to think about. So, so those are the steps. And we have a meeting once a month that I'll talk about next that is a way for people to learn how to get started. And we really try to support people as they start a COPE program. One of the hallmarks of COPE Northern Sonoma County is our monthly leadership meetings. So we invite all of our leaders from Northern Sonoma County, the community leaders, not our neighborhood leaders, because it would just be too many people, but our community leaders to come together once a month. We do a tip of the month. We do, preparedness tip of the month, which Nancy usually does. And then we launch into a discussion about a topic of interest. So recently, or we have somebody come from a local organization. We just recently had one of the disability organizations come in and talk about some of the battery backups for people with disabilities that are available through the electrical PG&E. Sorry, I don't know.
Is that a funded program? That's a funded program. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So those kinds of things that you want to make sure that people know about and avail their residents to. The last meeting that we had, I call it the stump the professor. We had Chief Turbovel just do Q&A for this coming fire season. What do we need to think about? And he talked about weather and where to get information about red flags and again, getting people to think about evacuation, those kinds of things. So it's a great meeting. We talk about projects as well. We just got a CAL FIRE grant. We've got 3 of our communities that are going to have roadside vegetation work, that kind of stuff. We want people to know what's going on and to be involved in doing something. We're very action oriented. Our monthly meeting is not about just talking. It's about what can we do about this? How do we get this information out? And as I alluded to before, we have something called office hours or info session that we have once a month for people that are interested in starting a COPE program. And oftentimes, just so you guys know, we do the first, if you wanted to come to one of these meetings because you wanted to start a COPE program where you are, we would be happy to talk with you and get you started. We're, again, just Northern Sonoma County in the work that we do, but we really want to share our best practices and hear from you about what your needs are and try to help you get started. We do provide a lot of community-based education. As I said, this is Chief Turbovel at a COPE community meeting. Usually people have at least annual meetings, and this is him going and giving information and answering questions, those types of things. In the upper right is a 3-part preparedness seminar that we did at Cloverdale Senior Center that included a smoke ready program that I was able to develop and then distribute air purifiers to seniors. And then down in the bottom is Commissioner Lara. He's our insurance commissioner, as you all probably know. He came and talked about insurance reform and how these preparedness efforts are now hopefully going to drive some of our insurance rates and how our insurance companies may offer discounts for FireWise and other ways that we've organized around preparedness. So those are the kinds of things that we do. And again, we have a smoke ready program. This is the Healdsburg Fire Department who came to my rescue the day that we got our semi delivery of air purifiers to help distribute them to our Latinx and senior communities. And these are, and on the left-hand side, a couple of local Nuestra Comunidad and the Botanical Bus reach out to our Latinx community members. And so we like to partner with folks. We really believe that we don't need to be an expert in reaching all of these populations, but that we can partner with people who are expert at that. So
because you became a 501c3, is that how did you apply for a grant to fund those air purifiers? That's what, exactly. When you're able to you started small, but by incorporating in that way, you had more access to funding and those sorts of things.
Exactly. So being a fire safe council, having a number of communities who had a CWPP, And becoming a 501c3 was a great combo in availing ourselves to funding that's out there. So this is from the California Fire Foundation, where we got funding for these air purifiers. And what was amazing was that we also got offered the same number of purifiers donated to us from one of the tech companies that makes these. So we doubled what we were expecting to be able to distribute. But there's, you know, amazing things happen when you do this work. I'm completely blown away by just, you know, how the work has moved forward so much by people really caring about what's going on and really trying to help us make things happen. We do a lot of fuels mitigation work. This is a nonprofit that moved from maybe, I think we started with $5,000 to, you know, 10, 20,000 to over $1 million now in funding. So we've just really grown tremendously over the last 2 years that we've been a nonprofit.
And you're an all volunteer organization. I just want to keep underlining.
Yeah. And you know, this is, as I've told Pamela, this is pretty much a full-time job for me. You know, I've become an executive director essentially to make this work happen. So that's why we're looking to hire someone. So, and again, blessed by being able to get grant funding for capacity building, which will allow us to be able to hire somebody and also collaborate with our local fire district and Volunteer Firefighters Association in putting forth a job that we'll all support. So just to let you know, that's one of the ways that you can make this happen. So we do put fire on the ground. We do use grazing. The bottom right-hand corner is our community chipper days that we do annually here on Fitch Mountain. That's my husband and one of our neighbors doing that work, getting the piles from people's houses and coordinating with the refuge company to make sure we have bins for non-chippable materials, making it easy for people to get this work done around their houses, whatever it takes. The upper right is working with one of our indigenous Pomo folks on, again, understanding cultural burning and understanding true stewardship of the land, and that cutting down vegetation is stewardship. It's not destruction, it's actually, and putting fire on the ground is a good way to get the native plants growing again and getting a healthier environment. So we really treasure our Pomo folks in this area. Of course, we're on Pomo land here on Fitch Mountain as well. We also work with our sheriff. We're unincorporated, so the sheriff is our law enforcement agency and does our evacuation. So one of the things that COPE did was distribute these evacuation tags to make sure that they got out to our communities so that when people left, they understood why they needed to do this and what the purpose was and all of that. And then we had an evacuation drill in a couple of our communities, our most high risk. You may know that Mill Creek was, for those of you that are in the area, may know that Mill Creek was devastated by the Walbridge fire. And they had just done an evacuation drill and just put in an alternative evacuation route in their area. So the fire officials in this area really believe that because of COPE, not just COPE, but being organized as a community, it saved lives because they had a communication plan in place. They had all this practice and all of this. So this is Healdsburg City Police and the Halter program, which is a great program for those of you that live in communities with animals. They have tons of information about evacuating animals, pets, or what's the other word?
We love Halter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, and podcast, we have an interview with folks at Halter on our podcast that was kind of recent, I think, actually.
Julie is amazing, and her folks, they just have a great depth of knowledge and are super collaborative. And actually, if you live in any senior communities, they have a whole packet just for seniors. So they're doing fabulous work. I can't say enough about them. And then again, on the right-hand side is the sign that we did for Fitch Mountain, which is just, again, to increase that awareness for people that come to the area. A lot of people come and use the river and leave during the day. They may be here for the weekend and a vacation rental. They really need to understand the fire risk. And this sign just got put in this year. And again, that's my husband and another COPE leader from the area. And then the other person is the Eagle Scout who put in that sign.
Nice.
Yes.
We have an Eagle project. Scout one like that down near us too. And I just love it.
Yep. It's just cool. You know, the architect who drew that, you know, donated his time and then to, you know, work with the Eagle Scout. So our Eagle Scout was Chief Turbovel's son, and he must have put in 5 signs for us. I mean, way beyond Eagle Scout. So that was really cool. The other thing that we do with COPE is we debrief after fires. So this was the Kincaid fire came closest to Fitch Mountain, and this is a picture from just across the mountain from where I live, from the river from where I live. And we gathered at Villa Chanticleer and had, you know, the sheriff, CAL FIRE, Healdsburg Fire, and our COPE leaders and residents. There were 100 people at this meeting to talk about, you know, each of the agencies gave a presentation about where the fire was, what they were doing, what went well, what didn't go so well. And the residents asked questions and appreciated. And, you know, it was just a really healing process to be able to debrief with these folks that had, you know, done so much work for us. Oh, I just get teary talking about it. Anyway, yeah, cool stuff that we've been able to do. And then finally, you know, Chief Turbovel has been so outrageous. He was very involved in the Tubbs fire, and it really changed his life and his perspective as a professional, not only personally because his son's school was right where the fire was, but also, and of course, many people that he knew, but it really made an impact on the way that he viewed firefighting. And his true belief is it's what we do before a fire that matters, almost more than what we do during the fire. So that is the thrust of the work that we do. And you know, what an amazing partner we have in him. So we nominated him for the National Wildfire Mitigation Award, and he received that last year. And this is Assemblymember Wood presenting him with a proclamation. And we were able to get it from Senator Feinstein. And so it was just special to be able to recognize him. And COPE was recognized by our Department of Emergency Management last year as well. So it was very, very sweet to get the recognition. It keeps us going, right? It's difficult work, and it's really nice to know that people appreciate what we're doing. So this is contact information about us. Again, communities organized to prepare for emergencies. Our website has just been redone. I'm hoping that people like it and find it welcoming, and also a wealth of information and resources for you. So be sure and avail yourself of that if we can be of help to you. So I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Well, that's fantastic. I just wanted to, if anyone has a question directly for Priscilla about her implementation of this program, as you can see, it has grown exponentially. So what was the start date of when you started to organize just your neighbors?
Yeah, probably 2015, 2016. It was before the Tubbs.
Before the Tubbs, it was because there was this terrible fire, is it the Valley Fire?
Yep,
in Lake County. Yeah, my coworkers had family members who lost their ranch in that fire. We were all like, whoa, that's a lot of fire. Never thinking like, oh, it'd be on our own property before we knew it in a couple of years. So you started that process. You didn't start with this giant program, right?
Oh, no. No.
That's the thing. It's like people might listen to what you're all doing now and saying, I can't do that.
No,
but
no.
You don't have to do all what you're doing, right? It's amazing what's possible.
Yeah, we do our our office hours. What we really try to tell people is, meet your neighbors at the mailbox, get their contact information, start there. Start on the neighbors that are around you. There's 5 people right there, probably, right?
Yeah.
And then just let it grow organically. Mm-hmm. And other people in the community usually come forth and say, that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Well, you probably know your neighbors too, at least right next to you. And that's how it happens.
You know what I did? And I live in Coffee Park. So our whole neighborhood burned down and then we rebuilt, and we were very much in touch with each other during that process. But guess what? Coffee Park has always had a lot of rentals in it, people coming and going. Some of the properties changed hands. So I know I don't know everybody all the time anymore. It's a thing you have to maintain, right? What my husband and I did last year is we went and bought like a dozen gas valve turnoff wrenches. And we started knocking on doors, offering them to our neighbors and say, just in case, do you already have one of these? And can we swap contact information? Like, beautiful. Maybe it's a plate of cookies. I don't know, but just something. We want you to be safe. We want to be safe. We want to help one another, and just start that conversation. Because it's maybe not the natural thing you start talking about with your neighbors is the threat of fire, but you can help each other a great deal. There's a question in the chat about if there's an emergency guide for short-term rentals, because I'm also really interested in knowing about, we get so many visitors. And also in the work that we do with After the Fire, our work in Oregon, I know up in the rural areas, it's a big vacation area. They had big fires in Labor Day 2020. They're rebuilding, but what about these people who are just there for the weekend? Yeah. What can be done there? Yeah. So there's 2 or 3 different things to think about. One is Sonoma County. Actually, I believe it's Hospitality Association, Sonoma County. Does that sound right, Pamela? There's a hospitality group, and they have put together a packet for vacation rentals. And then the other piece that I would say is, making sure, we hope that our counties, like we're changing our laws in Sonoma County around vacation rentals, and they will include things like making sure that your vacation rental has enough parking so that people aren't parked in the middle of the road, which is an issue on Fitch Mountain. Those kinds of things make a big difference. Making sure that there's a contact for the person who's managing that property or owns the property, so that they can get a hold of the people that are there. Those kinds of things. Evacuation zone information, Yeah. It's hard enough for people who live here to know what evacuation zone they're in, right? Yeah. Yeah. When you go to a hotel, on the back of the door, it says, in case of emergency, turn that. There's a little map, like it could be just on the door, some of those things. Yeah. 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 Patty, I'm curious, tell us a little bit about your group that you mentioned, if you are able to, and then maybe you have created something for vacation rentals or short-term rentals.
Actually, I was there at the beginning of the neighborhood response group formation, but I'm not on the steering committee now because. Okay, it's in Marin.
Let's for the recording so people know. Marin, it's called Neighborhood Response Group, nrgmarin.org.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. And it's got the, how to put together, like you were talking about, if you're interested in having your neighborhood get ready. So it's got information on how to, have a little coffee gathering and get to know your neighbors and see if anyone steps forward with curiosity, they can be the lead. And, it doesn't take a lot of people. It takes 2 people.
And how many do you think for both of you? Because, for instance, I just think about my own neighborhood, Coffee Park. We had 1,400 houses. Even to rebuild, we divided into 5 areas to kind of make it easier. But even my area has 500 houses in it. So What do you think is a comfortable group size for being, a hub for communication? Or is there a best practice for that before you have to divide?
I don't know what the answer is statistically, but I live in a condo association. And so we divided up the 29 homes by building. We have 4 buildings. So
that makes sense.
We have it's called a block captain, but we don't have a block. We have a block captain for each building, and then they kind of know who lives there, and they know what needs, and do you know how to operate a saw and that kind of stuff.
Got it. Okay.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah. So Patty, you mentioned getting together for coffee. So in Sonoma, we get together for with wine, of course.
Yes.
So again, you'll use what's ever culturally appropriate wherever you live, right? So that's really it. Really, it can be quite simple. And as far as communication is concerned, there's so many different ways to communicate. I'll share with you what we do. We use a texting platform called GroupMe. Okay. And we are really lucky to have, again, those community leaders are on a GroupMe with our fire officials. Are you all aware of the new app called Watch Duty?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's California wide now. It will be going to Colorado and Oregon next. I don't know in what order. Yeah, that's
amazing. Anybody here not familiar with Watch Duty? Because I'm a big fan. Patty, do you have a smartphone? You'd have to have a smartphone to use it.
I use Pulse Point. Is it the same as Pulse Point?
It's better
than Pulse Point.
Wow.
Yeah. It only gives you a notification of a vegetation fire, and it logs the response to it quickly. And so that's what I have friends who are in my fire family who are like, oh, I don't know if I like having that Watch Duty, because I know every time a vegetation fire breaks out. I said, yeah, but doesn't it make you feel better when you know it is immediately responded to and then immediately it's controlled? I've always found that to be good. So, but you set the notifications that you want. So if you don't,
that's what I did for notifications about fire. I don't want to hear about all the people that are going attacks to the hospital, but I do want to know about fire. So notifications.
So this Pulse Point, it was, once it became really so useful to all of us here, I guess they got the funding to go statewide not that long ago. And so that's what's going. So you decide what county you want information about. Interesting.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. So John Mills is from our Coke community, and he's the one who started it. So the difference, Patty, is that Pulse Point tells you when there's any kind of fire, whereas Watch Duty really tries to make an effort to only tell you when there's something that you need to know. I mean, there are so many, you'll see on Pulse Point, it'll say vegetation fire, Sonoma County. I just got alerted and my blood pressure went up for no reason, because it doesn't mean anything. Plus I'd have to dig to find out where that fire had been and whether it's resolved or not. But Watch Duty, you can go to a map, see where the fire is, and then follow along for what the response has been. There's air response, or the air's been called off, so you can get a sense of how it's going, how involved the fire is. It's kind of like listening to the dispatch for it, but I've tried to get them to speak in language that most people would understand and not fire language. But they're all fire people, so they're very much used to that language. So,
and they've added some images now, like some fire camera images too. So that's cool. So check it out, Watch Duty. And I'm glad to hear that Oregon and Colorado may be getting that next.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And the other thing that's cool about it now is that you can submit photos as well. So if you're near a fire, you can actually help with getting the information out there and all of that. So it's a two-way conversation, which is nice.
What's special
about the short-term rentals came from the Southern Marin Disaster Council, who is putting together such a thing. And I thought, let's not reinvent the wheel if it already exists. So I thought,
right. But I'd love to know about it and hear about it once they've got a draft together. That would be great, because we will share that. Mm-hmm. There's another thing called Map Your Neighborhood, which is another program that is similar, about neighbors, helping neighbors know who needs help, who has what resources. It's implemented in many places. I think Sebastopol is using it. I think down in Southern California, they're using it. So if you look up, there's a website for Map Your Neighborhood. It's just another model. I think as long as somebody's doing something, we all have to do something. But I wonder about, what are the special needs of our seniors? I want to make sure our seniors who may not be online, that's what I worry about. They may not have a smartphone. They may not have watch duty. They may only read the printed newspaper. How can we help? Yes, Patty.
Well, the reason I stopped working so much on neighborhood response groups is I became the director of Age Friendly Corte Madera.
Oh, okay, great.
And so we became aware with your Sonoma County fires that all of, I'd say the vast majority of the people that were lost were elders who either didn't drive anymore, or didn't understand that they needed to leave, or didn't hear that they needed to leave, all those kinds of problems. And they're now coordinating between the Marin Center for Independent Living for Disability and Aging and the disaster first responders, so that they're trying to address that need. And one of the things is thinking that, okay, well, my daughter lives in Sebastopol, she can come and help me. No, you need to have someone set up beforehand who knows that they're the designated person who lives 2 doors down to help you. So that's one of the things for elders. But we're having one of those faux evacuations where you grab everything and only go to your driveway on Sunday.
Oh,
and
good.
One of the things I picked up was something called Disaster Preparedness by Seniors for Seniors, or something like that.
Oh.
And I can't remember if it was the Red Cross. I'll look it up and email it to you.
Thank you.
But that looks like a good resource.
Yeah, we put together, because, you know, a lot of our COPE leaders, we're older folks, we're retired folks, right? We have time to do this work. And we also there are a lot of people living in these communities who have been here for a very, very long time. Yeah. So we brought together our gerontologist and our preparedness coordinator and myself, and developed a PowerPoint presentation for our COPE leaders around, what is it, you know, how do you approach seniors differently than you would somebody else? You know, larger print, you know, sitting down with people and really taking your time, prioritizing an evacuation plan, sitting down with them, helping them fill that out, you know, so that they get it done. Thinking about transportation. So Patty, you must know that, you know, there's just not enough transportation programs in, especially our rural areas, to get people out. Right. So that neighbor connection is so important, so that people have transportation out. So again, I'm trying to be thinking about how to engage family with people to support the process, and yeah. So we've learned a lot, but it's really hard to reach some of these folks, because they are very isolated. At some of them, and those are the folks I worry about most, of course. Yeah. So yeah.
And for those people who may live in even more rural areas than you, up in Fitch Mountain, does something like this make any sense in your opinion? You've been working in this now, even more spread out. What can be done?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a lot of rural communities, farm communities, et cetera, that are doing this. I mean, Dry Creek Valley, Alexander Valley, all the way up to Lake Sonoma. Those areas are all working on doing COPE. I mean, in some of those areas, they don't have PG&E lines. They're so self-reliant, right? They have their own well. They don't, you know, their communication is a really big problem for them, even daily. So when something goes awry, their communication, that communication becomes very important for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And getting in and out, of course.
Yeah. And so I would say any advice is like, okay, check your insurance to make sure it's adequate on your home. If you rent, make sure you have insurance. And secondly, if you're asked to evacuate, do that. Or hopefully you'll know that you were evacuated, but it's a good idea to leave if the authorities think you need to get moving.
Or don't even wait. I mean,
for
our disabled folks and our folks who have mobility issues, leave. It's a red flag day. Go visit family.
Yeah.
Don't wait until there's a disaster to leave, you know, or you're nervous. A lot of people are just plain scared to death. A lot of it's fire season now, especially in the summer and fall. And it's like, well, it's okay to go on vacation this time of year. It's okay to decide you need a break from living in this area that can be pretty intense. So I try to make sure people honor that anxiety that they have and take care of themselves.
That's right. And then with so many folks now being able to work remotely, which before COVID wasn't an option, perhaps during those really difficult red flag times, just staying with a friend is the sanest thing to do.
Might be. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I keep a bedroom set for my daughter who lives out in Forestville on a 1-lane street. Like, you know, it's a bad weather, just come stay over. You know, to have that in your back pocket is good.
Right.
But we know that resilience, personal resilience, and one of the factors is having social connections. And there are folks in our communities who lack that. And so other areas like maybe faith communities, different kinds of clubs, like you said, organizations that serve senior populations, or these are great leverage points to maybe reach some of these folks as well. Certainly schools are wonderful leverage points for getting the word out about things, because anyone, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be the older folks, but certainly could be a diverse group of folks at the public schools. So if they're willing to share that information as well, we all want to help keep one another safe during these times. So
I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Latinx folks, you know, our farm workers and other folks that have had difficulty evacuating, either because they're required to stay and work or lose their job, or whatever it might be, that they couldn't get out because of lack of transportation, not understanding because things were presented in English and not Spanish. So there's that too, you know, to make sure that we're reaching some of our folks that maybe English as a second language.
That's something to keep in mind too, about people who do not actually own transportation of their own, but rely on public transportation. That would be good to know if your neighbors are in that situation, so you don't take off and leave them behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I oftentimes think of, again, those farm workers who are here from another country, don't have a vehicle, rely on the vineyard where they work to transport them when they need to go someplace. But I had a neighbor across the street who was a young woman who never had a driver's license and was home during the day by herself. So that's, you know, anybody could be in that situation.
It's true. Even if your car's in the shop, you know, I don't have my car today and I'm going to rely on Uber. Well, I don't think Uber is going to come if there's a fire. So just thinking those things through and having plan B and plan C, just so that you're ready. And, you know, our kids do drills all the time at school. They know what it means to have to prepare just in case, almost too much. But we could continue to do that, because when emergency strikes, if you just automatically know what to do, it could save your life. So I want to thank you so much for sharing this information with us. Sure. Thank you for Patty for being here and being willing to share as well. We did record this. We're going to share it. And I would love to develop in our community program for our website some different toolkits for how to do this where you live, so we can help more people figure out what to do to be more ready, to be more safe, and to get through these seasons together.
Yeah, like you said, Pamela, it's really, the ability to be resilient is based on this neighbor helping neighbor in my mind. And that kind of relationship building helps us all get through this. I know our anxiety level has gone way down now that we feel like we've done some preparedness work and know our first responders by their first name, know our neighbors, it feels good.
It's super cool. It's super cool. Yeah, if it helps us even cope with the stress of it, that's another win too. So thank you all. Thanks for doing this work. It's important. And I think you were able to express that you were rewarded through it, even though it was a lot of work, that there's some delightful parts that you never would imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, that's amazing. Well, thanks all for coming, and we hope this information is helpful. And always reach out if you have an idea as well for a topic that you'd like us to cover in these monthly sessions. I'd love to hear something. He'll hear from you, and I'd be happy to organize something. So take care.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.